Musharraf. Jazakallah.
Thank you very much, Zafar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin Mu'adin al-Jud wal Karami wa alihi wa barik wa sallim wa salli alayhi. Assalamu alaikum everybody and welcome back to our second session. I want to press on with the themes of the Qur'an. So, what do you see as the most important theme of the Qur'an? Would like to start off with. Theme, we mean the subject, the topic. So it's the subject matter, it's the topic that it's talking about. So what do you think is the main topic, the main theme of the Qur'an? Okay. First, one main theme, and then inshallah from that, we will branch off into the other different branches of that main theme. But what would you say would be
We have a volunteer.
Yes, brother.
Assalamu alaikum. I think one of the main themes is like the oneness of Allah.
Okay, so we can go with that. Fine, Tawheed. I think everybody would agree there. Huh? But what about it? Yeah, Tawheed is the oneness of Allah, but what about it? What is the Quran trying to do with that theme? Aisa?
Quran is informing us that one of the things you need to take from this world is taqwa. Taqwa.
You have to unpack that.
Taqwa
It's
is
very tightly packed.
Yeah, because this Ramadan, what is it prescribed? To achieve taqwa. So you may achieve taqwa. Taqwa is, it describes the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all situations, that Allah is with me, Allah is watching me, Allah is listening to me, and I use my all 7 bodily organs in that manner that Allah is watching me. And then the good deeds, may Allah, alhamdulillah, will turn into taqwa and we will get a reza of Allah.
Let's stay on that idea of the major theme, the main theme. The theme number 1 of the Quran is Allah. But what about Allah? You said it's about making us mindful of Him. The word taqwa is a very interesting word. And in my translation, I've got 6 different translations of taqwa here because it occurs 71 or 73 times, the word taqwa in the Quran. Ittaqullah, ittaqullah. And I've translated it variously. In fact, in one place I translated it as faith because in that context I couldn't translate it as mindfulness. It had to be have faith. You had to. So it's from faith to mindfulness. Okay. Mindfulness is about being attentive, aware, and actually live in the moment. And I hope you can see that, a lot of the time we don't actually live in the moment. We are somewhere else. Have you noticed that? I've seen people, their dreams are about, the Pimber and back in Mirpur. They're dreaming about the dam, and they're thinking about their zamina and their cows and buffaloes, So that is how we can be somewhere else and not mindful of. And one of the great things about our educational system here, British educational system, is that we really train people so well to do the work they are expected to do, to follow the rules. And did you see our wonderful Prime Minister, how she cried and broke down? That is a result of this educational system. It makes you dedicated, committed to your country and to the work that you are prepared to do. And this is what it does. But that is it. It's focused on the dunya, on single subject. Her subject was my country, Brexit at this moment. So she dreamt Brexit. She ate Brexit. It was Brexit was everything for her. And when it was taken away from her, she cried. Okay, that's really interesting. But the point I wanted to hear was how the education system here makes you very focused. But focused on what? On two things: consumption and production. That's what the modern capitalist society is all about, really. How can we produce more and how can we consume more? It's the wretched. Is the wheel, the economic growth wheel. That's very important. Isn't that right? But it's made you very, very focused. So, Theresa May would certainly be the horse of the capitalists. No, anybody doubts that? She would be the Ghaus-e Azam, seriously, of the capitalists. Subhanallah. This was what Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani radiallahu ta'ala anhu was. But with thoughts of Allah, with the thoughts of doing good for humanity, for working for the love of Allah and his love of Allah. Completely focused on that. So, so when we talk about, taqwa, so taqwa has this idea of being mindful, but mindful of Allah as well, and of akhirah as well. We're not saying, we denounce the world, we seclude ourselves, and, we become ascetics. No, we don't do that. No, we don't. Islam nowhere in the Quran it talks about the dunya and the wealth in that term either. Nowhere does it condemn wealth. The Quran never condemns wealth. All it says is, أَحَبَّ إِلَيْكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَجِهَادٍ فِي سَبِيلِهِ فَتَرَبَّصُوا. If you love this more than Allah and His Rasul, and in striving for truth and goodness, then you're on the wrong path. Then فَتَرَبَّصُوا. Then wait for Allah's decision against you. Did you see that? And wherever it is, everywhere it talks about is this is more than. So the point I was trying to make was our education system makes us very mindful of our worldly responsibilities, doesn't it? This is why it's so successful, this part of the world. It is the, perhaps the smallest but the most powerful, in terms of its influence. Only 67 million, but the influence is so huge because of this idea that, we train people to be focused on their consumption and production. What I'm saying to you is the Quran does exactly the same thing, or wants to produce people who are similarly focused on Allah. They're connected with Allah. They're linked with Allah. They are lovers of Allah. Allah loves them and they love Allah. Okay? So that's the mindfulness that the Quran is trying to actually teach. And so yes, if you say that the central theme, the pivot of of Quran is what? Allah, then of course you now have lots of branches of it. Okay? Which will make that focusing on Allah easier for us. Okay, so what would be the another theme? Okay, so we've got the central theme there. So what are the branches of this theme? Major branches of this theme of Tawheed? Yeah? The young man here?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I just want to mention two things. When you're talking about Allah, I like the Surah Ikhlas, where the description of Allah is given. And also in terms of mindfulness, I've come across it in mental health as well, and also read on it from gurus. What they say about mindfulness is people usually do two things. They live in the past, which is gone, and also they live in the future, which is imagination. So you should do neither. You should be present in the moment.
Good, thank you. Okay, you mentioned Qul huwallahu ahad, which is really an amazing, short, pithy description of what our faith in Allah should be. What is our faith in Allah? It's a description of our faith, and this is why it's called Surah Ikhlas, the sincere, genuine faith. The genuine faith, that's what it is. So what is this genuine faith? قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. In the name of Allah, the kind, the caring. Say, He is Allah, the unique. Allah, the eternal. He is not a father nor a son, and none is equal to him. So there's 4 things here about Allah. First, he's ahad, not one, no? Unique. Okay, that's really important to remember, because one has the idea, one can be half as well, can't it? Be quarter. And one can be multiples of 2 and 3. But Allah is beyond numbers as such. So he used the word, he's ahad, the unique. Okay, unique. And he's as-samad. As-samad has the idea of actually being independent, not needing anything. Is anybody here independent? You know, if there was a 14, 15-year-old, he would certainly say, oh, I am independent, hey? Have you noticed those nutter teenagers, you know, who think we are independent, hey? I'm independent, eh? And, you know, Aakne is kehne, Abbe nalvi, Ammi nalvi, har ek nal hai. I'm independent. You know, they just not learn to, you know, their testosterone levels are high and they're strong, big muscles, and, you know, they think, oh, I'm independent. And I hope you can see how ludicrous that idea is, because nobody's independent. In fact, you know, in our childhood we are dependent. And then, you know, we think we become independent, but really when we become slightly wiser, we begin to realize that we're actually interdependent. And that is the highest level of intelligence, really. And this is what the Quran teaches us as well, that you are actually interdependent. You know, you ask the successful people, what will they say to you? I am successful because on my right is somebody, on my left is somebody, on my front is somebody, behind, up there, below, there's somebody who's propping me up. I am completely dependent. I am. Isn't that true? Really, you can never. And that is where arrogance begins as well. You know, when you begin to think, I am. Rumi again tells a nice story about this I, because we have lots of these I's nowadays, to be honest. Too many I's, actually. So this friend wants to visit his old friend. He's not seen him for a long time. So he goes and knocks on his door, and from inside comes the question, who is it? And he says, it's I, so-and-so. And the friend from inside responds, there is no room here for 2 I's. So go away. So this friend is really hurt. I've come here after years to meet him, and he's saying to me, go away. What does he mean? So he goes. Rumi tells it in his own very beautiful. You know what really makes Rumi beautiful is because it's language. I wish I had that, you know. And he just goes on how he roasts and grills himself until he removes and gets rid of his I, and then comes back again. And now he knocks on the door, and the same question, who is it? And he says, it's you. He says, welcome. So, you know, the idea is, you know, this I, me, mine, rather than having you, he, and I, it's always now me, mine, and I, Jen. That's only me. I am everything. Center of the world. This is what selfie world is doing to us, to be honest. And it's a very dangerous world, because when we become so selfish and inward looking, we lose the perspective and the reality. We become arrogant, you know, and all that matters is my beauty, outward beauty, my pleasure, hedonistic pleasures at that as well, okay? And that is hugely damaging. And this is where the loneliness begins as well, and all the problems, psychological problems begin. So I hope you can see, you know, this idea of independence, okay? We are not independent. I hope we all, recognize this, that we are interdependent. We need each other. So Allah is the only one who is completely independent. He's the eternal. This has the idea of from beginning, he has no beginning and no end. And then he has no father and no mother. No father, no son. He's neither a father nor a son. I went for an easier translation, okay? It's much more meaningful because it has I hope it also, at the same time, rejects the Christian belief of father and son, all right? And it's actually, there's nothing wrong in the words I've used. It's actually neither a father nor a son. And وَلَمْ يَكُلْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ. He has no kuf. Kuf. Say that, everybody. Kuf. Kaf, fa, wow. Kuf. Kuf. Kuf means compatible, a match, somebody who's a peer, who's equal. Allah is matchless, peerless. None is like him, is compatible. No, there's nothing that is compatible with him in that sense. So yeah, he reminded us of Surah Ikhlas, that is actually describing our faith. It describes our faith in Allah very powerfully and beautifully. Jazakallah. So, okay, let's move on. I want to just very quickly go through. So, what are the main themes, of the Quran? I'll talk about how I went about looking at sectioning the Quran, because there were, as you know, there are no section Quran before this. I certainly didn't have one, and so what I did was, how do we find the topic? So let's say we take Surah. Yes, Surah Yusuf. Surah Yusuf is easy because it's got 29 episodes. 29. It's one drama, the life of Yusuf alayhi salam. But how many episodes, parts in it? The Quran has 29 episodes in it. So that was quite easy actually to do, because first it's the beginning of. So what I've got here is the introduction to the Quran. Alif Lam Ra Tilka Ayatul Kitab al Hakim. So again, the introduction to the Quran. This is a book full of wisdom. Okay, we're going to tell you a story, the Quran tells us. And then the story of the dream of Yusuf. So you can, that is very easy to tell. Then the next is the plot, the brothers hatch a nasty plot. So that's another story. Then what happens? Yaqub alayhi salam is crying, okay, because he's lost Yusuf now. They come back with this terrible news that Yusuf has been eaten by the wolf, okay, and so on. So that was quite easy, to see where the sections were, okay. But with some other places, it's not that easy, But again, I could see for example, if there's a description of Jannat and Jahannam, sometimes the Quran actually compares and contrasts them, okay. So I would then call that, the contrasting of paradise and hell, okay. So I could do that quite easily. Why did I go for, why do I want to section the Quran like this? I believe that, the identification of the beginning and the endings of topical sections is really one of the best ways to understand the whole, to understand the Quran. If you didn't do this, I think you yourself subconsciously, I'm sure, when you're reading the Quran, you are subconsciously, if you didn't have the headings in front of you, what are you doing? You're trying to find out, aren't you? Where does the story begin? Where does it end? Where is the conversation starting and where does it end? I'm sure you must be doing that. I certainly was doing this. My students were constantly asking, when I was teaching over the decades, where does the theme begin and end? So it helps you to, identify the beginning and the end. Helps to uncover the meanings of vague words, ambiguous words, phrases. Now you understand the storyline. Now, tradition. I'm sure, those of you who go to listen to ulama and listen to talks, what do they normally do when they start off, with their talk? What would they do in their khutbah? They would recite. How much of the Quran would they recite normally? How much normally did they recite? Couple of verses. How many do that? How many recite a couple of verses? How many do they? Normally they would recite. Usually, the more deeper this scholar is and higher his understanding is seriously, he would recite actually sometimes just one word or two words or a phrase. You'd be lucky to hear the whole ayah from him. Seriously. Am I exaggerating? It's like that, isn't it? Rarely would they do even a whole verse with you. Okay? And then they would delve into the meanings of the words or the word and all the different grammatical nuances of it, its syntax, and how it's, so and so said this about it, and so and so said this about it, and some ahadith about it. but you would rarely even get the meaning of the whole verse. Now that is called atomized tafsir. It's the famous classical traditional way of doing tafsir, okay? And I think those were wonderful, powerful people. You know, they knew their Quran. They were hafiz of the Quran. They knew the Arabic. They knew its meanings, all right? But so that tafsir is really for big scholars. It's not written, you know, Bazavi is not written for me and you, yeah. It's really written for people who are really strong grammarians, okay? Kashaf, you know, was written for people who knew rhetoric, okay? Ilmul Ma'ani, okay? And even today, many who still know it won't understand it properly, okay? So they were written with a very specific people in mind and a purpose in mind. And that's needed as well. You know, you needed all these different minds and brains. You needed the grammarian. You needed people like Fakhruddin Razi with his logic and his understanding of Greek philosophy and Greek science of his time. He was master of that. So he wanted to look at it from his angle. You needed people who were masters of hadith, like Ibn Kathir. So you bring in different angles. So I'm not at all, astaghfirullah, criticizing. Okay, so when I'm talking, it's not about criticism. I'm just telling you how they did theirs. So this is sort of atomized, broken down into constituent words and phrases, and sometimes they will put it together for the whole of the verse. And their aim was try to derive rules and laws and generalizations from it, which at all is not mine and your aim. Okay? What do you want from the Quran? What do you want from the Quran? What do you want? You want knowledge. Okay, personalize it, dear. Come on, personalize it. What is it you really want? Personalize it. You want, say, I want. You know, I want the message of the. I want to hear what Allah is saying to me.
I want to change for the
you
better.
Want to change, but
yeah.
That's the next stage. But before that, you want to hear.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, you want to change, mashallah. That is the final result and the conclusion of it. Is I want to change, but and in other words, I'm not really interested in your in your grammatical niceties, Sheikh Bezawi. I'm not interested in your Greek philosophy, Imam Fakhruddin Razi. Please, give me the message so I can really change myself. Isn't that right? Yeah. So let me just give you this very famous verse, which when the Imam wants to talk about sabr and patience, particularly during Muharram months, he would read which verse? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah. Isn't that right? Inna Allaha ma'as-sabirin. You know, believers seek help and strength through patience and through prayer. Allah is with those who are patient. And then they'll talk about what is sabr in psychology, what is sabr in linguistically, and sabr in tasawwuf and so on, and examples of sabr. Hey? I thought that's fine, that's very good, no problem. But for God's sake, there are 5 verses which are all about sabr, and up to inna safa wal marwata min sha'airillah. Where it then ends, the section on sabr ends with the story of my Hajra and how she showed that patience when she was looking for water on Safa and Marwa. And Allah says, look, this is the result of being patient. You become so wonderful that we make others walk in your footstep, and their pilgrimage is not accepted until they walk in your footstep, because you were a sabra. You were not a sabar, but a woman. A woman, until we walk in her footsteps, your Hajj is not complete, okay? And I hope you can see this equality, gender equality, which is one of the great contributions of the Quran to humanity, really, because women before this, according to the Greeks, women were actually soulless. So in other words, they were not complete human beings. The Christians then took it a bit further and raised the status to say that she's a half human being. Seriously, she's half human being. And there's a story about one of the great saints of the Christians. And so this saint, who is in fact, Saint Augustine, the great saint patron saint of this country, actually, one of the great saints and a scholar. And it's told that, when he became an ascetic and a monk, he left everything. And when his mother discovered eventually where he was, she went to the monastery and she knocked on the doors and she knew he's there. And when he found out that my mother is out there, he sent a messenger saying, tell her to go away. I'm not coming out. I do not want to see a woman. That is the greatest saint of the Christians, because they regarded even seeing would make them sin. Seriously. I mean, what you see in sexual perversity and madness in West, it actually sadly comes from those wrong attitudes that Christianity and early Christian fathers brought about. Okay, I must say this because this is what happens when religion is not practiced and understood properly, and it's not and it is changed. And this is what happened to Christianity. But the Quran came to correct that view. You know what it says? A few times. Man amila saliham min zakarin aw unsa wa huwa mu'minun falanuhyiyannahu hayatan tayyiba. Allah says, whoever does righteous deeds, whoever believes and does righteous deeds, whether a man or a woman, they are true believers, and we shall give them a pure life. And this is repeated again and again, showing the equality of man and woman. The equality of man and woman. Okay? There is no discrepancy, not a slightest, not a thread less, equal, really. And in fact, the hadith which talks about, where is the paradise? Where is your paradise? Subhanallah. I hope you can see this contrasting attitude the Quran built. What is very sad is, we haven't honored that thing. And, only a few weeks ago, you might have heard that the British Parliament is passing a new law about divorce called no-fault divorce. No? Yes. Read Surah At-Talaq, hey? And you will see how the Quran, presents this most abhorrent doing of a person, this abhorrent act, how this is actually presented and how Allah gives this freedom. Yes, okay, you can do divorce, but do it in sarrihuhu sarahan jamila, in the most beautiful manner, okay? Do it in ma'roof, so you are good and kind to one another. No fault finding here. There is no. So I hope you can see what is the British law doing. You would have thought this is the greatest law of the whole world, eh? It might be. It possibly is. It is the best law in the world. Yes, certainly is. But there is a law that is better than it. And it's trying to catch up with it. It's catching up. Seriously, amazing. I've seen hundreds of these sort of incidences where both science and law and Christianity, and you see what the Quran has already predicted or given us. The attitude of the Quran towards divorce. I do actually recommend, please read Surah At-Talaq. And then you look at the British law, existing law on divorce, and you will see, astaghfirullah, what a world of difference. Sheikh? World of difference. Amazing. And okay, let's not get carried away with the. So I was telling you about sectioning. Why, what I want you to do is don't just rely on one verse. Read the whole section. Then you will get the full picture. Okay? So that's why I said, the old tafasir, remember they had a wonderful purpose, all of them. And, they were really masters, to be honest. They were geniuses, every one of them. And you can tell that from, and my own teacher, Shah wrote tafsir in 5 volumes, and I had the honor of living with him and learning from him. And I know what a genius and what a genuine and saintly being he was, and his knowledge, and where, I am at his feet, really. But they all had, this view that this is for specialists, yet the Quran is, we are presenting you translation. We're making this because we live in now a different world. We live in a world where we have 100% literacy, certainly here, don't we? 50% are university graduates, highest level of learning you can have, okay? then GCSEs and A levels. It's 100%, isn't it? So there is no reason why all of us cannot understand the Book of Allah. So this is why we do now need to present it in a way that each one of us can easily understand it. It's our language, it's our way, alhamdulillah. So why some stories are repeated, truncated, and sometimes just hinted to. So this is interesting. Quran repeats stories. It doesn't repeat them exactly as they are. It takes bits here and bits there and will hint to them because they fit in with the story, okay? Or they fit into the context, okay? There's a context to it. And it highlights the wisdom of the arrangements of the diverse topics in the surah. So there's a very good reason why having this thematic approach is actually beneficial for you. Can you think of anything else yourselves why this thematic approach is useful for you and you will find it, helpful for you? And anybody like to share why you would find this? Yasrab.
I don't know about understanding it because my knowledge and understanding is almost zero. But I have a question from you talking about understanding.
Yes.
And to understand the Quran for a lay person is, I find it myself very difficult. So one of the verses I was reading and I mentioned it to you, and maybe you can help me to understand. But Surah Yunus, verse 25. What does it mean when it says, for example, Allah calls toward paradise, guides he who he wants? If possible, explain so ordinary people like myself can understand. Because what I understand that to understand the Quran, you need a living teacher as well, so that you go into the. So I was reading this other day, and I made this note because it's a verse specific.
Verse number
25.
Okay, let's okay, and this is exactly, mashallah, he brings out what I'm just saying to you. When you take a phrase, when you take a part of the ayah, you're going to be struggling. Okay, so Yasrab gives a very good example. So this is what the Yasrab was. Wallahu yad'u ila daris salam wa yahdi man yasha'u ila siratim mustaqim. Yasrab, listen now, Allah says that Wallahu yad'u ila daris salam. Allah invites you to the house of peace. Allah invites you there. And He guides who He chooses, who He favors, who He likes. He guides him who He likes to the straight path. Okay, now, and لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً. Okay, let's carry on, and this is where I think you can begin to see why reading it, as a full section will help you there. No, so here it says that. To the peace, and then it says, for those who are righteous, there will be an excellent reward and more beside. Neither dust nor disgrace will stain their faces. Such people will be the companions of the paradise, living there forever. Now, this is a very good example what Haji Sahab has done. He's just taken a phrase and now says, explain this to me. You're not going to get it. Until you read the context, it comes out very nicely itself. Now, I don't want to do any tafsir of it. I want you to just listen to the before and the afters of it, and you yourself will begin to understand what it means very clearly.
If I may say something,
Gigi.
To understand myself, I read the ruku before, I read the ruku after, and I read the translation. Keep reading it. And I'm talking about an ordinary person.
All right, okay.
I'm an ordinary person.
Okay.
So I couldn't.
Okay, but I'm just saying to everybody here, so if listen to this then, Allah invites you to the house of peace, and He guides who He wants to the straight path. And those who do good, they will have more, okay? And they will not be disgraced, okay? So the meaning is already there, to be honest. If you were to read that, what it is saying is very clearly, it's saying that Allah invites everybody to the house of peace, okay? And house of peace is what? The religion of Islam, the teachings of Quran and the Sunnah, okay? That's what Darus Salam is, okay? So He's inviting you to that. Allah is who is he inviting? Yes, everyone. But then he goes on to say, وَيَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ, and he guides. You know, in my translation, in some places, not here, I think, I have written, I'll see if I have written here as well. And Allah calls you to the house. He guides the one R. Okay. And he guides who he pleases. But in some places, and he guides him who wants to be guided. He guides him who? Yes. So that is the mahzuf. That is the ellipsis here. That he guides him who wants to be guided to the straight path. He guides the one who? Because, he's already said that, this is an open invitation to everybody. So there's no kafir and Muslim, no believer and unbeliever here. Well, we invite everybody. It's open, all right? But then, who does he then guide? The one who wants to be, yes, the one who wants to be guided. Okay, so it's really important to read it in that full, and this is where I think translations have to bring this out as well. And in some places, I've actually done this. Whenever Sheikh Professor Muhammad, I've translated man yasha. وَيَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ وَيُضِلُّ بِهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. He guides those who want to be guided, okay? And he lets them go astray who want to go astray. He lets them go. He doesn't misguide them. Remember that, Sheikh? Otherwise, this would be very bad. If you say Allah misguides people, is that a good thing? Allah is bar. Allah is always bar. He's always doing the good. He can never do the wrong. Did you see that? So this is, alhamdulillah, this is why we do need translations that are meaningful and bring out the essence of the Qur'an. Okay, yes. So I hope you've seen the benefits of having themes, and in my index, we've got I had a special index made. In fact, 3 indexes we had. One was of names, one is a general, and then one specifically for the introductions. So, so if you want to look up any topic, I think there's nearly 1,500 or 2,000 entries here. So you will be able to find whatever, inshallah, you want to look up. Then you can see where they come. And then when you put together those different sections about the same topic, you get a whole essay. And you put that together yourself, mashallah. If you want to do a proper study, you can do that now. This is what, this is why these, having thematic approach is helpful. Anybody else want to share why they find themes useful or beneficial? They would find them beneficial as well and use them more rather than, without any sort of thematic approach. Anybody else want to? No? Okay.
Just, could you do the example you showed the topics at the back index, where if you've got a slide, to show that, for example, one of the topics, and
okay.
there are.
I haven't got a slide, but I will share with you. What is it you want to know about?
What you just mentioned.
Patience. Okay, let's go for patience then. Okay, patience in our general index will be here. Bismillah. Patience on page 1325. There's a heading here. Patience, and underneath it, it's got patience as a gift from Allah. Surah 16, verse 125 to 27. So there's a whole section there, and another one is patience as righteous. As righteousness, actually. That's the verse, that the whole section there. Patience of the strong-willed messengers. That's mentioned in Surah 46. Patience on being separated from a child. Whose patience is that, everybody? Come on. Separated from child, eh? Yaqub alayhi salam, okay? That's, Surah 12, verse 18. Patience seeking help with. That's Surah Baqarah, verse 153 to 57, the whole section on it. So, yes, you just need to look up, and there's another section there on peace, on parents, for example, caring for them, disobedient son, kindness to them, spending on them. See also family and children. So yes, it's quite a comprehensive. I had it specially made. We commissioned an indexer to make that for us.
Can I ask you, does this cover verses that are abrogated?
Oh yeah, true. That's too, Jana. You're going too deep, Jana. We'll have a little discussion with you afterwards. Nasikh and mansukh, abrogated and non-abrogated. Come on, forget about them. Sorry. Listen, for me and you, I just want to know what is Allah telling me to do so I can live a nice life, Jana, and thrive and flourish. Okay. Forget about those niceties which the fuqaha will argue about, and they can. Okay. So I just want to quickly talk about the themes of Makkan and Madani surahs. What we mean by Makkan surahs is surahs that were revealed whilst Rasulullah, before Hijrah, effectively, whilst he was in Makkah. All right. What do you think would be the themes of these surahs? Come on, what would be the themes of surahs in Makkah? What was the environment like in Makkah? Yes, there would be a lot of patience and how you interact with the non-Muslims, the idolaters, the non-believers. What else? What would it be focusing on then? What would be the focus be on? Yes, Tawheed. The focus was really about, three things, because those three things were, the Makkans were constantly questioning about and couldn't fathom. One God? We have 360 gods. What are you talking about? One God, eh? And you talk about being the messenger of God. How could you be the messenger of God? There are rich people here. There are very wealthy people here in Makkah, and you want to be the... couldn't Allah find someone else? But your theme of Quraysh was to be the prophet. How could that be? So Risala is another topic. And third, very important and talked a lot about in Makkan surahs is Akhirah. Resurrection, resurrection, constantly. The Makkans had a serious problem with the idea of life after death. They were really materialists. They were true materialists, to be honest, like modern materialists. So there is the another reason why this Quran is so relevant to our age. We live in a very materialist society. Would anyone disagree with that? No. It is a very materialist society. So the materialist society means that you can't see beyond the material. The atheists nowadays are materialists, and they believe there is nothing beyond the physical. There's no metaphysical, no spirituality. Everything is actually the result of physical interactions. And this is not, psychology is also physical and material. Psychologists also are actually about, how the brain waves and the brain nerves fire the pulses and how they are, how the thoughts are brought about. But it's all to do with physical, okay? Neurotransmitters, okay? Chemicals are sent out and all this. So it's still very material. We are talking about spirituality. We're talking about a different realm, okay, that is beyond the material. So the Makkans couldn't, understand this. They were quite unique in that sense because around them were the Babylonians in the east, and of course the Jews in Palestine and in that area, and of course also in Medina. The Jews were settled there, in 5th century BC, the Banu Qurayza and Banu Nazir were settled in Medina nearly 1100 years before the Prophet ﷺ went there. 1200 years, in fact. So they were settled people in. So the Makkans knew a lot about the Jews. So when the Quran is talking about the Jews, in fact, one of my friends, Professor Holger in Cambridge University, is an expert on the antiquity, that time of history around the 7th century, and the Christian and Jewish practices and Islamic practices. So he's very, expert in that, and he's been able to show that, the Quran's description of the Jews and the Christians of that time is very, very accurate. It's very accurate. And the Quran doesn't actually borrow anything from them. Okay? In fact, there are many new things that the Quran presents. So it's because the Orientalists have been making this allegation that the Quran is a copy of Judaism and Christianity, and that's not the case there. It isn't at all there. No? That so the Meccans couldn't for a moment think there is a life after death. So Abu Jahl, sometimes would bring these whitewashed bones of the camel's femur and thighs and throw them in front of the Prophet and say, "You tell us that this rotting bone can be brought back to life?" And the Prophet said, "Yes, this is precisely what I'm saying. This bone will be brought back to life." Jurassic Park, you all remember? And of course, scientists today actually can bring the extinct species back to life. We're capable of doing that. In fact, there have been few instances where they've done it. But what's the problem? If that hairy elephant, the mammoth that used to roam around these wonderful pastures of your Bolton here, what would be the problem if we did actually bring it back? We could bring it back. There's no problem with that. Science can do it. We can bring those, take some samples of DNA from the fossils of the mammoth. We can actually do it. No doubt about it. What would be the problem? Where would it live? You haven't got those lush jungles left or forests no longer, okay? So that's the problem. Same with some of the wolves that have gone extinct. They wanted to bring them back, but the problem is the habitat is now so different. They won't be able to survive. So do you understand what I'm saying? Subhanallah. If human beings can bring dead from bones, what about Allah, eh? Subhanallah, eh? This is what in Surah Yasin, Allah says, He argues about us, eh? He argues about us. He doesn't look at his own meager and humble beginnings, eh? From a drop of sperm, eh? That is where he began. And so, this is amazing. So there is a lot about resurrection, how the dead will be brought to back. So how does the Quran explain that? In many powerful ways. One of them is rain. Allah talks about the dry, arid desert. But when it rains, within a few days it becomes green and lush. Flowers, plants are growing everywhere. But you said it's dead. It looked dead. It was the mud had cracked. It's dry and dead, but out comes life out of it. Subhanallah. And of course, if you were clever enough and inquisitive enough and you dug below it, you took a trowel and dug a few inches below, you would find some worms there, wouldn't you? Life, subhanallah. And even if you didn't see any worms, I can show you there are millions of bacteria there, okay? Which is living things. And actually the Quran talks about that as well. How what you see is dead from the top, but underneath there is life. And that's, again, amazing, because how would the Prophet ﷺ know that there is germs underneath, eh? And millions of them, and they are alive, subhanallah. So the Meccan themes were most to do with strengthening the faith in Tawheed, Risala, and Akhirah. Okay, so there were very few ahkam. They couldn't, because the Muslims couldn't even pray outside. Okay, they had to do it secretly in Darul Arqam. All right. So, but in Medina it's totally different. Medina is now Muslims are free, and so here Allah reveals all the ahkam, all the laws and all the practices that they need to adopt. Although in Makkah, of course, there is moral values are being taught, social relationships are being strengthened, so is spiritual ideals. So those are common between them. But you can actually see the distinct nature of the two, and the tone and tenor of the two are really. So the focus is on faith, focus more on works and behavior and character development, and of course how to live in a society as a organized, civilized community, as a civilized state. Actually, how do you run a state? Actually, and what is very interesting? The Quran juxtaposes Makki and Madani surahs. It's not that at the beginning So you have Surah Al-Fatiha, which is Makki, followed by Surah Al-Baqarah, which is Madani. Okay, Surah Al Imran, which is also Madani. Surah An-Nisa, which is also Madani. Surah Al-Ma'idah, which is also Madani. But then comes the Makkan surahs, and then Anfal, which is an Araf as well. They are Makki surahs, and then followed by a Madani surah, and Makki, Madani, and what the Quran wants to do is, why do you think? Well, so remember in Medina, it's about some of the battles. It's about politics as well. It's about the law. And if it keeps on talking constantly about one, it could be, you would say, well, it's ignoring the other side. So by putting them together, Makki and Madani, you get the best of both. Okay? So that's one of the... so to develop this Makkan, Madanian mindset and not be exclusive, Madani or Makki Jaina mindset. This mix ensures that the reader gets both types of teachings, Aqaid and the Ahkam. Aqaid and Ahkam Jaina. So, I'm going to leave this out because this is about, I'm trying to justify why themes, and I'm taking some words for themes. Okay, An-Nasakh, Ilm al-Munasiba, Ilm al-Maqasid al-Suwar, Al-Ghard al-Mahwari, and Al-Wahdat al-Mawdu'iyya. Sheikh Muhammad will explain those to anybody who wants to afterwards, all right? See him. Okay, I mean, this is just an example of Razi and of Ibn Qayyim talking about how Quran is thematic. Okay, so I was trying to prove to you that don't think that I'm inventing something. This traditional and well-established idea of themes in the Quran. Okay. So, if I was asked to compile a content page for the Quran, what would it look like? So this is, I'm just thinking with you. If I was, somebody asked me, just like a textbook, we all go through textbooks and we always want to look at the contents page, don't we? And normally we would just put the names of surahs, and that's how I've done it here as well, But I'm just now looking at it from, I want to know the themes, how would you do it? So this is how I think we would go by. Belief systems, Iman or Imaniyat, or Aqaid, if you want to call it, okay? So those are the most important one. Commitment to Islam. What do I mean by this there? I've used some of the terms there, of Islam. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu udkhulu fis silmi kafa inna ad-dina 'inda Allahi al-Islam, and so on. It's about committing yourself, dedicating yourself to Islam, challenging idolatry and materialism. That's a very powerful one. Challenging, we're at this moment, materialism is at its height, and we are actually being engulfed by it. To be honest, it's encroaching on us very rapidly, and we need to be able to be immune to its negative effects. Okay, so listen to what I said. It's yes. Okay, to be wealthy, to have money, materialism is not completely condemned, or we're looking at its impact, the negative impact it has, and believe me, it does have very, very devastating impacts. And if you want to see examples of it, you just need to look at Zardari Saab, Sharif Saab, and Trump Saab, and MSB Saabs, and you will see all the impacts of what happens when when wealth becomes the be-all and end-all of people's lives. Okay, so we need to be challenging this. There are dozens of passages which talk about the helplessness, the worthlessness of material things, and particularly their idols. The 5 pillars, the divine laws. This is a big chapter. There's possibly what portion of the Quran is the divine laws? Anybody like to guess? It's about 500 verses of the 6,236 verses. So that's a really just under 5%, isn't it? Less than 5% is about, and yet, most of the time, what in your Islamic studies, what you've learnt is just this. You've not learnt the other 95%. We forget that. We just focus so much on fiqh, and we forget the rest, that the Quran is all fiqh. No, it's not fiqh, for God's sake. Okay, it's only a little bit, 500 verses or so. Spiritual values. We never think about that the Quran teaches spirituality and tazkiyah and tasawwuf. We've got a sheikh here, professor, who is our professor of tasawwuf? There's a sheikh here who was the brother from Fas. No, this is Professor Muhammad. And yes, I'm saying that there's a professor of the tazkiyah and tasawwuf, okay? The spiritual, I'm just saying, Sheikh, that people forget the spiritual values, and that as though it's a topic to be pursued, and yet the Quran is really always, in fact, talking about this. And inshallah, if we have time, I'll take you through Surah An-Nur. Surah An-Nur is 10 powerful laws about decency and of mixing, and yet, right smack in the middle of it are 2 long sections, all about Allahu Nur Samawati wal Ard, all about the spirituality. Connecting the law with spirituality is so important. Yet we forget about it. I've just taken some of the spiritual words: mindfulness, taqwa, okay, and alertness, reliance, tawakkul ala Allah, commitment and submission. That is silm, and taslim and rada, tawbah, repentance, and seeking divine forgiveness, supplication, dua, okay, and jihad for self-improvement, and justice, the worship, ibadah of the prophets, the sacrifice, qurbani, spiritual growth is something which, the Quran talks about and we ignore. We don't actually realize, just like, we physically grow from our childhood to this age, and then we begin to diminish as well later on in our late age. Similarly, our spirituality, our relationship with Allah, our link with Allah, our connection with Allah actually can be strong, or your Wi-Fi connection can be strong, can't it? It depends where you are and what mood you are, or where you're. Similarly, with Allah, your connection can get weak, sometimes completely cut off. Just pray that Allah never puts us in that situation where we are totally disconnected from Him. But spiritual, values are a very important part of the Quranic teaching. Moral virtues. I normally talk about 10 moral virtues, and my book, 7 Steps to Moral Intelligence, is all about how we actually develop these wonderful qualities. If you really want to become a thriving, flourishing, successful person, lovable and loving, carer and caring, there's only this way, to be honest. Acquire the qualities of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because these are the 10 qualities of Rasulullah: truthfulness, honesty, kindness, generosity, forgiveness, patience, gratitude, modesty, humility, and courage. These are the wonderful, and they are very difficult, to be honest, and all of us have them to a degree, but what should we be doing? We should be getting stronger in our patience, stronger in our humility, stronger in our generosity of giving freely without expecting anything in return, and so on. And kindness, caring for others, feeling the needs of others and relieving them of their needs, and serving them. Do you see that? So this is this is something the Quran keeps on reminding us about, how we need to. The condemnation of moral vices, particularly of anger, arrogance, greed, and jealousy. Those 4 cardinal vices are condemned again and again through examples. And the Quran gives examples. Whose example does it give of arrogance? Fir'aun, yes. But it's interesting, Fir'aun. Who else? Come on, the most famous, of course, is the Shaitan, of course. Aba wastakbara wa kana min al-kafirin. He disobeyed and then was haughty, big-headed, arrogant, okay, and became a kafir, okay. So, and same with all the other vices. It condemns them, gives examples how to avoid and not to fall into the trap of those. And of course, these moral vices are what make us really weak people, frail people. If you want to know your weaknesses, you know, each one of us has weakness. I have lots of weaknesses, and you can actually whittle them down to these 4 things. Because each one of these is actually a multi-headed thorn or a multi-headed monster. Seriously, each one of these is arrogance, for example. How do you display arrogance? You can be boasting about yourself. You could be like Trump, picking fights at any moment, whenever you want to. Just pick a fight with anybody. That's called belligerence. Okay, that's a form of arrogance, isn't it? So it has, in my book, I put out the branches of each one of these. You know, it's got about 20 different branches, arrogance. And we don't know, you know. You say, oh no, मैं इतने मुतकब्बर जाए ना, oh मैं सिर्फ उसी इस तरह ना समझना, लेकिन मैं मुतकब्बर ना जाए ना. You see, we fool ourselves in different ways, and it really is amazing, you know, how the shaitan fools us, and we think we don't have these. So there are subtleties, and this is why we need to learn this science of akhlaq. You know, it's a very big science. And Aysab, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, you mentioned the books, you mentioned it twice. Do you present solutions in that book?
Yes, of course. The 7 steps to moral intelligence, Aysab, means 7 steps. Okay? Yes, it is a manual. It is a handbook. It is a handbook in which I talk and I explain first what is akhlaq. And these 10 values, I'm not making a joke. I hope you don't mind. You know, I love you, Aysab. You're Buzurgyo. You're well, perhaps the same age as me. You're my brother. And so don't take it, you know, as teachers and friends and students, you know, we can have a little banter, all right? Don't take it seriously, you know? So Aysab, so I talk about what are and I just focus on these 10 moral virtues, and then the 4 moral vices. I then talk about how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam displayed, portrayed, and lived these beautiful values. How he was kind, how he was generous, how he was humble, how he was courageous, and so on. I give examples, so you now begin to understand what courage is, what kindness is, what forgiveness is. And when I give you those examples of Taif and him forgiving the Makkans and so on, you can begin to understand what. And then I give the divine morals. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sabir. He's not sabir, he's actually as-sabur. What is he? As-sabur means not just the patient, but always patient, ever patient, very patient. How patient is he with you? Subhanallah, it's amazing. There's a verse, it's just beautiful. You know, there's a verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you know, I'm not going to give up providing you guidance just because you are disobeying and you are rebellious. I'm going to continue to give you guidance. Subhanallah. Isn't that sabr? Amazing level, eh? Allah, the mighty Lord, is saying, you know, I know you're silly and you're naughty, but I'm not going to give up. I'm going to continue to guide you. Subhanallah. You know, that is the... And so I explained them how Allah is sabir, how Allah is Rahman and Rahim as well. So you get a very good picture of these 10 moral virtues. You understand each one of them. And then I talk... This is from the book of Imam Ghazali called Riyazatul Nafs, Tahzibul Akhlaq wa Mu'alajat al-Amraz al-Qalb, where he talks about how we can overcome our weaknesses and develop these. So I use that to look at the stages you will have to go through and what are the different means and resources you have at your disposal. We all have them, seriously. And this is something the Quran brings out. You've got huge potential. It empowers us. You know, don't feel victims. You really can overcome these weaknesses, all right? So yeah, I take you through so that's what the 7 steps are. And I've got another book I'd sell for you, 7 Steps to Spiritual Intelligence, all right?
I will give you a gift of book as well. There is one chart there with the tazkiyah.
MashaAllah. Well, I know that's wonderful and beautiful. Yes, that, yes, absolutely. And
so
this is...
if I may say, you know, when I send the solutions, it's a book after book is written in words.
Yes.
Now
Practical.
in this center, you are presented with a sheet, then you monitor yourself daily, whichever level you want to go.
Mashallah.
So alhamdulillah, that is the book which I will give you a gift after.
Wonderful. Well, I've already got these. Jazakallah khair. I love, what the Sheikh is doing, making these things visual and actually making it you experience. Rather than just having the words, you experience it, alhamdulillah. And that's what we need. So coming back to the themes of the Quran, I'm just giving you, can you see the bold ones are the main sort of major themes, and then what can you see? Sub-themes. Can you see that? So those are the sub-themes I'm giving you here. Social obligations, a very important part of our lives. We are social creatures. We've got to live with others. How do you behave towards others? How do you take care of others? And this is really mark of a true man of Allah. The Wali Allah is the one who actually serves others. And that's all he does. He wants to serve. Man khadima khudima. He doesn't want to become a makhdum. He wants to be khadim. He wants to be a servant of others, really. So there's very clear guidelines on earning and spending wealth the right way. A test. That's what the Quran calls it. Fitna. Innama amwalukum wa awladukum fitna. Your children and your wealth is a great test for you. Again, I hope you can see there's nothing negative in that. Is it? It's not saying, just telling you the reality. It's a test. So don't take it to anything else. So how are you going to live that test here? No? Hoarding, cheating, squandering, miserliness, all are condemned. Coping with sufferings. Every one of us faces sufferings. Part of human life is a human condition. But how do you cope with it? That is where the Quran gives us resources. It gives us powerful resources, how to cope with the challenges of life, sickness, war, and peace. A little bit too detailed. Let's go on to stories of the prophets. This is really remarkable human beings who were endowed with sublime character, who became role models, okay? Their trials and tribulations are golden. They are to be admired, and the prophets the Quran mentions, all of them, their trials, as Ayub, for example, he's legendary in terms of patience, okay? His sabr is mentioned, how he was tried and what was the consequence, and his prayers. Musa is mentioned the most, and there's most about Musa than any other prophet in the Quran, actually. Well, no, the Prophet ﷺ would be first, although he's not mentioned by name, but actually the whole of the Quran is addressed to the Rasul ﷺ. And it is about him. The stories are really about the Prophet ﷺ without mentioning him. Okay? Again, a very amazing way that how he does it. But Musa is the next most mentioned. And we see how he had to go through trials. Okay? How his people made him suffer. How Pharaoh made him suffer and so on. But and how he coped with that. Okay? I call this the history of human disobedience. Okay? The history of human disobedience. And that's what it is really. Spiritual values. We've been through this. Is it going backward? Okay. So I've got we're going to finish this themes. I've got a printout here for you with all these here. So inshallah, if you can give them to the left and right. And you can, just to remind you, but if anybody wants a soft copy, I'll be happy to send this. So have a look at that. And do fill in yourselves as well. This is not exhaustive. Okay, this is my understanding. It can be, I might have left out things. So there's about just over 100 themes. The main are about 12, and then sub-themes. I'm sure there are, everybody will have their own taste, and you might come up with something which I've missed out. It'd be nice if people shared that with me so we can complete that, make it a really complete list, inshallah. Okay, I have this is actually a worksheet that we're going to use inshallah after we've done a tafsir of one of the surahs. So, Haji Zafar, you know, I'm conscious people are a bit tired and they need a rest now. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I can be here till morning. I've got lots of. I've got another 5-6 PowerPoints with hundreds of slides. Okay, don't worry. And I've got a lot, but I'm just conscious of you. I don't want to overdose you. So,
Can we can go up to 5:15, another 15 minutes.
do you want to go?
10 minutes, 10, 15
10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What I'll do is we'll do a bit more than that because I want to take you through one of the surahs. Okay, with the purpose of getting you to use this worksheet on how to study the Quran effectively. Okay, this is a worksheet that I've been using over years. I've been developing it. So after I used to do my Dars Quran, I used to get the students to actually give me feedback for themselves actually. Okay, but we'll do that. Let's take one of the surahs, yeah. No? Let's take one of the surahs, and we can then look at. You'll use this practically. The reason I'm doing this now is so that between today and tomorrow, when I do my second workshop, you will use this yourselves for this worksheet for any of the surahs or any of the passages. Okay, so let's just take those of you who've got the Quran with you. Let's open one of the short surahs. Perhaps we can do Surah Al-Layl. Surah Al-Layl. Surah Al-Layl is Surah 92, page 1279. Those who've got this, so it's أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى وما خلق الذكر والأنثى إن سعيكم لشتى فأما من أعطى واتقى وصدق بالحسنى فسنيسره لليسرى وأما من بخل واستغنى وكذب بالحسنى فسنيسره للعسرى وما يغني عنه ماله إذا تردى إن علينا للهدى وإن لنا للآخرة والأولى فأنذرتكم نارا تلظى لا يصلاها إلا الأشقى الذي كذب وتولى وسيجنبها الأتقى الذي يؤتي ماله يتزكى وما لأحد عنده من نعمة تجزى إلا ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى وَلَسَوْفَ يَرْضَى. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. On the margin of the Arabic page, I've written a little lesson, it's a lesson really. A successful person is a giver who likes others and loves Allah. On the other hand, unsuccessful person is miserly, hates others, and is full of himself. That's sort of a little point that I get from here. But let's go through the translation of this. In the name of Allah, the kind, the caring. Diversity and differences in creation. Now this is a very important theme of the Quran. Ikhtilaf. Ikhtilaf means diversity, pluralism, and differences. Okay, it doesn't mean arguing and conflict. All right. Urdu which this is where Urdu wale ikhtilaf nu samne ke ladai karna jaya na argue. No, in Arabic it actually means differences. All right, and diversity and pluralism. Okay. So by the night as it conceals, by the day as it reveals, by the male and the female He created. Indeed, your works are very different from each other's. So the one who gives is mindful of Allah and believes in common good, we shall make his work easy. But for the miserly, who thinks he is self-sufficient and denies common good, we shall make his work hard, difficult. His wealth will not benefit him. His wealth will not benefit him when he falls into hell. Now, the point I wanted to make to you here was, the Quran takes oaths of three things here, of the night and of the day, and then وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى, the difference between the male and the female. Okay, so three difference. Night is different from the day. Males are different from the female. Okay, and then it says in the
attack now.
Every one of you
Gender
has a
fluidity.
different goal, has a different destination. Isn't that right? Every one of us sitting here at this very moment, we face the same Qibla, we read the same kalima, but each one of us has a different goal at this very moment. We have a very different target, we have a very different need. Isn't that right? Inna sa'iyakum lashatta. Your endeavors and your enterprises, the Quran says, ashatta, are very diverse, very different. What is the Quran saying? Well, don't despise or look down on differences. Do you see that? It's teaching you appreciate and value differences. Okay, it's really, and this is amazing, to be honest. This is something very, you would have thought this is very modern, They're teaching us now racism is bad. Well, it started back in the 60s, Before that, it was okay to call blacks whatever, and abuse them. And they began to make those laws, and it's, but our human weaknesses are still there. Racism is still, sadly, deeply entrenched in all of us, and this is something which the Quran condemns and teaches us to overcome. It's a very great contribution, to be honest, to justice of humanity. You don't find that kind in Bible. This talk about diversity and pluralism. You would have thought this is a very modern phrases, but they're in the Quran. The Quran uses them. So in lots of my headings, actually, I use them as well, because I think it's important to show that contemporariness. The Quran is never, it's timeless. It's very timely, and it is timeless. In the future, it will be relevant, as it was relevant in the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, after talking about these differences, it really wants to guide us to this great man and this poor man, this wonderful man and this wretched man, this Syed and this Shaqi. That's what it wants to guide us to. So what does it do? It says, this is the real difference that you should be worried about, actually. The difference that you should be really worried about is this, good and bad, righteousness and evil. That is, and then it defines who are the right people. Man ata wattaqa, subhanallah. The giver, the mindful, and saddaqa bil husna. And he likes goodness wherever he sees it. He likes goodness wherever he confirms it. He confirms beauty. Wherever he sees beauty, he confirms it. What does a wretched person do? We criticize. First we criticize. This is a mistake there, Typography, that's no good, no capitals there on this. Isn't that what we do? We look for the
mistakes.
وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى. He would admire. That's a beautiful design, Nice graphics, Positive thinking. I hope you can see how positive thinking the Quran is, Allah says, such people, those have these three qualities. Just if you were to develop these three qualities in us, he's a giver. What is he? He's a giver. And then he's mindful, attentive, lives in the moment, He's not lost, he's not intoxicated. And thirdly, whenever he sees beauty, he can recognize goodness and beauty and affirms it. Isn't that beautiful, What happens to such people, Ya Allah? فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. We're going to make things easy for him. We're going to smoothen the path for him. And then, as though we didn't understand this, or we might not understand this, the Quran goes to the contrasting the opposite and says, well, if you haven't understood it, listen again now. أَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى وَكَذَّبَ بِالْحُسْنَى. If you didn't understand what we said before, then listen. The one who is miserly, the one who thinks that he is independent, okay, and doesn't care less about, anybody and particularly God, okay, and thirdly, he rejects beauty. Can you see the contrast there? A'ata bakhila, taqwa and istighna, the independent, the one who's dependent on Allah, relies on Allah, okay, and thirdly, he is confirmer of good, saddaqa. And what does he do? Saddaqa, he denies beauty. Even if he sees beauty, he says, no, it can't be beautiful, it's not good, okay, he denies it. See those contrasts? It opened with three differences. How then, these three, and then it goes on to give example further on. Okay, what does it do there? Humans are spoiled for choice. That's my heading. Our role is to provide guidance. What does Allah say? Our role, subhanallah, that's amazing. My role, Allah says, is what? Inna alayna lal huda. I mean, literally this would mean it is compulsory on us that we guide. But nothing is compulsory for Allah. So we have not used that word. So instead I said that our role is to provide guidance. That's all. That is, gentleness actually. This is hilm of Allah. Okay? The hereafter and the world are ours. This world and the other world it's ours. Okay? I have warned you about a raging fire, where the wicked will burn, who denied and turned away. But the one who was mindful will be kept away from it. He gave his wealth in charity to purify himself, not as a payment for favors received, but longed for the pleasure of his Lord, the highest, and he will be pleased with the outcome. So it ends with giving an example of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He's the one who gave his charity, whose wealth in charity to purify himself. Why did he give it? The Quran says, "Allazi yu'ti malahu yatazakka." He gave it in order to purify himself. I hope you can see, three oaths, three qualities of the right person, three qualities of the worst evil, and then just to say, well, three things about Allah Himself. Look, my job is to give you guidance. I'm there to do this. I'm powerful, okay, and all this. And then talks about the great Abu Bakr in 3 verses. What was he? He was the giver. He was the saddaqa. And he also, وَالَّذِي جَاءَ بِالصِّدْقِ وَصَدَّقَ بِهِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ. The one who came with the truth and the one who confirmed his truth, that is Abu Bakr. Okay? He's the one who's doing tasdeeq, okay, here. But then Allah describes his giving. He was very generous. He gave, why? مَا لِأَحَدٍ عِنْدَهُ مِنْ نِعْمَةٍ تُجْزَى. He's not doing it in order to get something back from anybody. No, he's not doing it for that, yeah, no? And he will be pleased with the outcome. وَلَسَوْفَ يَرْضَى. He will be happy, very happy, So, I presented you this surah. If you read it this way, the way I've presented it, I hope you can see the connectedness, and the theme here seems to be one of diversity as well, isn't it? And how we differ in our enterprises. I've written that in my introduction. I'm not going to read it out because what I want you to do is, I'm going to give this to you, the worksheet, and for you to actually think about. And I'll take you through it very briefly. So on this side, you want to give this out? And Zafar? Let's give a copy. And what you will see here is, this is just an aid to help you to look at this section that, we've just, this surah we've just read, okay? So this is just to make you become more serious in your study and make this effective for you, inshallah. Okay? Just give me one so I can see one as well. So I can. Okay, has everybody got a copy now? I just have here. You've got your copy back? Good. Okay. I've written there, we're going to finish off in 2-3 minutes just to go through this. Have you got? Are you waiting for one? Okay, studying the Quran effectively. You should experience the Quran. You know, I know Sheikh, mashallah here, wants you to experience ibadah, namaz, doesn't he? He wants you to experience the Itikaaf. You know, experience, you know, is something you take with you. You know, it's something that you really effectively see, feel, touch it, you sense it, you actually smell it, you actually breathe it. Isn't that right? That is experience, okay? You should experience the Quran as a fascinating letter from your caring Lord. So first, understand the meanings, then think about them. Finally, how will you apply them? And this worksheet, what I've done is, so number one is summarize the story told or outline the theme in the passage you read. So what would you say is the theme here? Diversity and the differences and a contrast between a practicing believer and a disbeliever, okay? And the consequences of doing righteousness and the consequences of not, okay? Again, you know, this, you know, should make you think about the whole surah, sort of bird's eye view of it. That's what you're trying to get, a bird's eye view of it. And it's really important. You know, how else are you going to remember it? But many of us don't think, you know, we need to know the Quran or stories of the Quran. We don't need to do it. We've never been taught that, you know, and this is what I want to bring a change to be honest. My mission, you know, is I want people to move from just reading the Quran to understanding it, just doing the tilawat to actually getting the fame of it. So we've just read Surah Al-Layl. It's a beautiful surah, you know. If Abdul Basit was reading it, you would all be mesmerized. Okay? And because the sounds are so beautiful. But we're not just talking about that. I think we need to move to the next level. Yeah. And look at the meaning. Isn't that powerful? How, you know, Allah is, throughout the Quran, Allah is teaching us just one thing. Come to me, eh? Qul inni a'izukum biwahida. Say to them, I give you just one thing. An taqulu lillahi mathna wa sulasa wa ruba. Okay? I just tell you to do one thing. Just to believe in one Lord. Okay? That's all, one thing. Okay? But, you know, we need to understand it. You know, we need to really get to the bottom of the story. And I hope you're beginning to reflect how rich this is. And this is why we need to produce translations, even better than mine, to be honest. I hope somebody will do that, you know, inshallah. And pray for me. I'm actually improving. This is actually the second edition. So you can see within less than a year, I've produced the second edition. And I think we had about 600 changes I made, improvements in most cases. And I've already actually started one third edition already. I've done, so it's constant, you know, and improving the language and making it better for our, you know, readers' experience, really. That's what we're trying to do. So summarize that story. So please, you know, whenever you read the Quran, don't move on to the next page until you say, all right, I get something from this page at least. One thing, all right, I'll get this. Talking about this conversation between the people of paradise and hell.
I've actually purchased that last year for myself. It took me about a year to complete it. But normally you have Ramadan, you read and that's it. But I'll read 1 to 3 pages a day.
MashaAllah, very good.
And I would reflect on those, and sometimes I would think that, what am I doing? What I need to be doing? And it actually sends shivers sometimes when it talks about judgment day and that it shakes you.
It does.
And then you think, like, I need to change myself. It's very powerful.
Absolutely. In the speeches of Allah, I hope we can read some of those. I hope you yourselves, you know, there are speeches of Allah here. You know, 3, 4, 5, 6 line on some. They're very powerful, to be honest. They do make you shudder and tremble, really. So next, number 2 is the lessons I have learned for my personal development are, you know, you're all here because you want to improve yourself. You're here because you know, you used to go to the masjid because, you know, dad sent us there. Eh? But, you know, we're here because we want to, alhamdulillah, we want to change, okay? And the Shah has given us orders, okay? We want to. So the lessons I've learned for my personal development are what? So what I've done is, you know, I look at our inner being in three parts. Our inner being, inner dimension is moral, social, and spiritual. Those are the three distinct teachings. You know, we call them the akhlaq, mu'amalat, and tazkiyah. Okay, those are the three: moral, social, and spiritual. And they are very distinct, all of them. They're very, very distinct, really. You know, we need to understand this, and I hope all of you are people who are serious about this. Do please read and understand these, okay? So what I've done for moral is I've put those 10 moral virtues there, and what you now need to ask yourself is, which moral virtues are mentioned in these in Surah Al-Layl? What are mentioned? Come on, what are the 3 moral virtues mentioned? Good, very good. Generosity is there. What else? Come on. What else was there? Okay, bukhl, opposite of it, not to be miserly and wretched. Okay. What about the spiritual one? Which spiritual one is mentioned? Very good. Wattaqa and? Where is the reliance? Where was the tawakkul? Was there a tawakkul there?
To be generous, though, you have to be reliant on Allah.
You're going too deep now. Come on, let's keep it to the words, okay? No. Just keep it to. Don't confuse. You know, this is why, you know, moral language. Sadly, you know, I'm sometimes flabbergasted at some of the dictionaries which cannot actually define some of these moral values clearly. This is how bad we've become now. We've lost morality, to be honest. So this is why you do need to understand what each... Kindness is not same as generosity. Generosity is not same as forgiveness. Forgiveness is not same as humility, okay? They're all very, very different. You know, it's just like saying pear is apples and apples are oranges and oranges are grapes and so confused and disoriented. No, that's not it. These are different things, okay? So don't confuse them, okay? So the next one is... So the spiritual is taqwa, and opposite of that, of course, is istighna. You know, the kafir is mustaghni. He thinks, I'm independent, I don't need God. But what is the social one there? Saddaqa. I think that is more of a social one because, you know, you are trying to appreciate others, goodness in others, beauty in their art, beauty in their clothes and beauty in their speech and whatever it is, goodness all around. You know, you're trying to appreciate that. That helps in social bonding. That would be a social. So what I would like you to do is you would then write here, you know, there is the moral value that I learned in the surah is about generosity, ata, and so I can become mu'ti. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ana mu'ti. No, Allahu mu'ti wa ana qasim. Allahu mu'ti wa ana qasim. Allah is the giver, and I am the distributor of that, those gifts of Allah. So, you know, do that. And then next he would say in the spiritual values, mindfulness is there. What else is there? Identify the social responsibilities. What? One of. I've said you know, the saddaqa bil husna is there. Okay. Again, you know, this is a means for you to learn those vocabularies and to be able to think and identify. You know, comprehension. Do you remember in your primary school? Who went to primary school? You know, sure you did. You're young enough. Did you go to primary school here? Yeah. Do you remember? Do you know in English? What was one of the most difficult things in English lesson? I used to find comprehension wasn't it? You know, we used to do comprehensions. I don't know whether they do it nowadays or not, but comprehension is your understanding. You know. And it's really important, you know, have you understood the text? If you haven't, you're not going to learn much, are you? So this is an aid. This is it's not a, you know, it's just helping you, it's prodding you. I hope you find it useful, and if anybody can improve on it, do please send me your improved version. Next one is, what are the action points from this passage? That is really important. Action point. You know, we're talking about experience. You're here in the retreat too. Yes, to experience. You know, you're here away from your home, from your, you know, that wonderful king-size bed. What's it? Which one is it? The best one? You know, that 1,200-pound orthopedic mattress one. You know, so you know you're here lying on the hard ground. Why? You want to experience something. What do you want to do? You want to experience. Yes. So so what are the action points from this? For me, well, You know when it says فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى, we're going to smoothen your path, okay? So the action point is, you know, I really want to do these things because Allah is going to make things easy for me. I want to become a generous person. I want to be mindful. I want to be someone who's positive and grateful and appreciative of others. Isn't that right? Yeah. So that's the kind of language you want to be using here. You know, do it in that way. You know, it's only when you use these words, you know, that you will behave like that as well. You know, so this is why language is so important. I hope you can see why. We don't even know what generosity is. How can you define for me forgiveness? We can't do it. You see why we're poor? So this is why, you know, you really do need to learn these. And the next one is new words, phrases, and concepts that I've learned from this passage. You know what is new here? You know, we read perhaps this whole concept of diversity. You know, it's very important that everybody's going to be different, and my job is not to be judgmental about others, but to appreciate and value them as they are, not to change them. So I hope, you know, you will use this. Whichever your favorite surah is, do please try it, you know, with whatever you've read, or passage from it doesn't have to be the whole surah, one page, or even a passage of it. Use it, you know, and work on that. I'll be around to help you, inshallah. So, Jazakallah, thank you very much, yeah, no? Thank you very much.
Jazakallah.